Director of the Wild Horse Fire Brigade, Bill Simpson, and Bill, take it over.
Do these work? Hello? Okay. So this is some of our board, and on the far side over here we have Kelsey Stangby. Kelsey is a member of the Quarter Horse Association. She just won a tipping championship in Illinois, it was, and she won the championship with a wild horse, actually, which shows a skill. There are some horses that are willing to work with a human, not many, but some do, and it takes a special eye to recognize those horses. And we have Deb Ferns to my right, the president of Wild Horse Fire Brigade. Deb is an MBA. Kelsey's a JD, I should mention. She's a lawyer and practicing in Chicago. Deb is an MBA, and Deb's a horse advocate from a long time ago. She lives down in Arizona. You guys know about me. And then to my left is Michelle Goff. And Michelle is our treasurer. Michelle has a background in science. Her bachelor had emphasis on animal behavior, and she has a master's, and she's a nurse practitioner. And so with that, I can't think of anything else unless you do, Deb.
Well, I guess what Bill has kind of indicated to you, we come from a wide variety background. What a lot of people don't know about Wild Horse Fire Brigade, we are a 501c3 in California, which Bill alluded to in his presentation. We also have a livestock advisor. We have somebody on our board that is Mike Schultz, couldn't be out here today because actually he's moving cattle, very active in RCAF and in the Cattlemen's Association, I think 9 years as a president of the Kansas Cattlemen's Association. We also have a board advisor who is a professor at Arizona State University, Julie Murphy, who works with us on things like what's going on with the Salt River herd, what's going on with the Heber herd, what's going on with the Alpine herd. So we have Julie Murphy on, and then we have a pro bono, very gifted attorney, Michael Harris from Vermont Law, that's on our board. And Bill and Michelle did this deliberately, because just having an all-volunteer board is not what he was looking for by itself. He was looking for a board that every one of us stepped up as all volunteers, and we stepped up and said, here's our skill set. Here's our skill set. Here's Kelsey's skill set. Here's Michelle's skill set. And I think that that's an amazing endeavor that Bill brought off, and we continue to look for board advisors that might think a little differently than we do, and that's okay, because it makes our board stronger in the end. So we're happy to answer, questions, any questions you might have, like, why would people do this? But ask a question.
Here we go.
Okay.
Hang on, tell us who you are.
My name is Barda. I'm from Tucson, Arizona.
Okay.
I have a question. On your board, you have someone from the Cattlemen's Association, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work with what you're doing?
I'll let you answer that one.
Okay. So Mike Schultz is his family had been in the livestock business for a long time in Kansas, and he founded the Kansas Cattlemen's Association. He's on RCAF. He's also on the Organization for Competitive Markets, which looks at different issues affecting the livestock industry, including label of sourcing, to let Americans source American versus South American beef, things like that. When Mike first saw the benefits of horses to reduce fire, and nobody is exempt. I mean, the smoke from these fires goes across the whole United States. People in New York are suffering from wildfire smoke out here. So, and Mike is a smart guy. Interesting that Mike is not a one-hit wonder. He's not just some guy with a cowboy hat with some cows. He's involved in the water board. He's a policeman in the town he's in. He does all kinds of different things. He's one of these guys, he's a polymath. He knows a lot of different things, and which is what attracted me to him, because I could see the mind of somebody who looks at things from all different perspectives. He's not monochromatic in his thinking. He's not like on one frequency. So when I looked at Mike, I said, you know, this is a guy that could advise our board about, you know, how can we do what we want to do, but also make it a win for the livestock industry? Because let's face it, you know, they've got a lobby, they've got, you know, people want to sell grazing permits. The BLM is big about selling grazing permits, forests doing it. You know, we have to basically make it a situation that's favorable for all the stakeholders and the wild horses, and keep them naturally wild and free. Not, oh yeah, we got to keep them next to these horses, and because they don't have predators, they overpopulate, so oh, let's sterilize them, you know, with PZP or Gonacon or whatever. You know, that's really bad management. It's very costly, and it's hammering the horses genetically. And Mike sees all that. He understands livestock production. He understands selective breeding, just like I do. Okay? When you use PZP on a horse, that's selective breeding. You're deciding who's not going to breed and who will. And, of course, then there's a secondary effect of that. So you're ending the life cycle of a wild animal. This is wildlife. You're ending its life cycle. That's meddling with Mother Nature. There's a better way to do it. We've got all this land where we can put them. So Mike, when I went to Mike, I said, hey, Mike, I says, we're a growing organization. We could use insights from your side of the coin. They're at the table. They're a stakeholder. We can't just ignore it. The BLM is a stakeholder because they've got a lot of jobs based around this whole thing. The livestock industry is a stakeholder, the petroleum industry, the mining industry, and they all have money and influence. They're all stakeholders. So we can't say we're not going to work with you. We have to say, how can we all work together, let the horses be wild and free, and still let you guys do what you need to do? How do we do that? And there is a way, but you got to ask the right questions to begin with. If you live with dogma, if you continue with an earth is flat, you're never going to be able to circumnavigate the globe and make all these wonderful discoveries. There are people that have to be bold, that have to step forward and go, look, this isn't the way it is, and we need to move forward. And so we have that opportunity, and Mike was one of those people that when I talked to him, I said, you know, we'd love to have your participation on our board, and he stepped up, and he's a great guy, and he's easy to talk to, and he's highly intelligent.
And I will tell you, I, for one, stopped and saw his ranch, going back, I mean, met his whole family, and the bottom thing with Mike Schultz is he said, ranchers are struggling too. And we were made very aware of that. Ranchers are struggling too. So bottom line is 97% of Americans eat beef. Ranchers are not going to go away. In the meantime, we don't want wild horses to go away. And when the BLM is pushed to pick them up, because the ranchers and the miners want them gone, when they're pushed to pick them up, what are the choices? Where are they going to go? We have another solution. We have a solution where they can, and I will tell you, I was at a board meeting in one of the counties, and a lady said to me, but if you bring them up to this critical wilderness area, they're going to wander down and eat my rose garden. She said that right in a public meeting, and I sat there and I went, I don't know what she's smoking, but it's the good stuff. Because no wild horse is going to deliberately wander down to your rose garden when they've got water and food and family bands way up in critical wilderness. So I think we need to stop being so short-sighted and stop worrying about a rose garden and start worrying about the extinction of real wild horses.
Yes, okay. We were going to meet somewhere. Can I scoot in front of you real quick? Maybe not. Okay. Got it. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
I'm Megan from Colorado, and my question is, and maybe legal viewpoints and all of that, how does your programs perhaps enmesh or intertwine with rewilding of predators in other areas of the country that are sort of happening naturally in some places, and where some folks has proposed reintroductions and things like that?
You want to answer, or?
I can
Okay.
take a try.
Okay.
So, yeah, I know that there's a large movement of people in the United States that want to rewild wolves and mountain lions and bears and things like that. And that's a noble cause. But we have to look at their welfare, the proper conservation of apex predators. And we just can't put them just anywhere. And a lot of people don't understand ecology and the coevolution of species on a landscape. Even on a relative short term, like 1,000 years. When you've made an area devoid of apex predators, the trophic cascades collapse. So all the other species under them disappear, things collapse, even plant life changes on the landscape. It affects everything. Now, the thought behind reestablishing an ecosystem by starting with a predator, it listens good, and I think it's a noble cause, and we need to talk about that more. That's an important dialogue. But we have to understand that in areas where they're ecologically collapsed already, it's going to take decades, assuming no red tape. Let's say nobody will sue us. Let's say we were all part of the wolf committee, and we're going to put wolves back out there. Well, and there was no red tape at all, or lions or bears. You put them out there, it's just not going to magically change overnight. It's going to take decades of work to bring everything back. It's not a solution for horses. We already have areas that have really robust resident populations. Where I am, like I say, I've got 100 pictures of dead horses that lions have killed, bobcats, wolves, coyotes, and bears. And a lot of these horses I know. We name our horses. We don't give them numbers. And I've got pictures, forensic pictures of the depredation. So yeah, it's a noble cause. Same thing with deer. I mean, we're down about 3 million deer in California. How long is that going to take to bring them back? Well, first thing is you need a moratorium on hunting. Now, nobody's going to like to hear that. Remington, Smith & Wesson, Mossberg, this big gun industry that makes a lot of money on sporting, they're not going to like to hear that. But the reality is if we don't have a 5-year moratorium on hunting deer, and then when we start hunting them again, do it better. We're doing it wrong right now, by the way. And I used to hunt, but I put down my gun because I realized that it's terrible. The bottom line is deer and elk, to get them to come back, we need a moratorium on hunting. And it'll probably take about 10, 15 years with a moratorium. And then when we start managing them, then we have to say, okay, and I ask hunters this all the time. Kids come up with a brand new shiny rifle to where I am, and they're going to shoot a deer. And I go, what are you going to get? And they say, oh, I'm going to find me the biggest rack I can find. And I go, really? I said, let me ask you a question. When a farmer wants a steak, what does he do? Does he go out and shoot his prize bull, or does he go shoot a steer? And I said, you guys keep coming up here where we are, and you're shooting our best genetic material so they don't breed anymore, and you're letting the unproven smaller deer, breed the does. We don't know if these younger deer are disease resistant. We don't know if they know how to fight predators. We don't know anything about these guys. They're not proven. When I see a big rack, I see a proven commodity. That elk or that deer is telling me by his antlers, hey, I'm disease resistant. I know how to fight predators. I'm a good candidate to breed the herd. That's what I see. But you got all these people killing them. It's reverse genetic engineering. So we have to look at a landscape holistically. We have to look at what's in the best interest of the landscape, how long it really takes, realistically, pragmatically, who's going to sue, how long is that going to take, and where we can do the things we need to do. We need to do livestock production. We need to have these established resource areas for our apex predators. We need to have places for these wild horses. They're wildlife. So that's what we have to do, and I hope I answered your question. I kind of try to cover it from different perspectives.
Next question, sure. I'll cut through this way. Tell us who you are, where you're from.
Hi, my name's Amy. I'm in the Sacramento area. And I have a question. Listening to your presentation, I'm kind of curious how you intend to have the Wild Horse and Burro Act amended in order to accommodate your program.
So Section 1339 specifically prohibits the BLM from taking horses out of an HMA and moving them into the wildlife. It specifically says you can't do it, okay? The BLM cannot do it. We want to amend that to say that the BLM can relocate horses from areas where they're in conflict into critical wilderness that are economically and ecologically appropriate. So that would give BLM land managers a tool to end conflict without all the angst of horrific, we round them up humanely as a family band, you bait them in, we get the whole family, and then, the BLM's got more trucks and semis than some of the big trucking companies, and then move them into the wilderness area. And let them go, and let them do what they do out there. And of course, the predators are gonna eat some of them. By the way, the day we drove down here, we lost a little colt. His mom showed up without her 6-month-old baby, and that means a predator got him. I mean, we've been losing babies left and right up there. So, so we can modify 1339. We don't need a whole new act. We can just modify 1339.
How are you going to get Congress to modify that?
Oh, there's a lot of people that want to do this differently. Every industry out there would like to see this problem go away. It costs taxpayers way too much money. The BLM is spending way too much money doing this stuff, and we're just getting a big inventory of off-range horses. That has to end. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So.
The other thing I'm looking at too is that, I work with Border Patrol quite a bit, and just so you know, when Bill gathered aboard, I'm an avid hunter. I'm a big 2A person. And when we don't always look for a board that always agree on everything, right? But when we looked for, I work with the Border Patrol quite a bit, and one of the things we work with them on is their Mustang program. And there is ways to make these wild horses not just be of benefit to Border Patrol or the New York City cops that have got some BLM Mustangs, and I've seen them again and again. We're looking to genetically preserve wild horses because right now we've got more in pens than we have running wild with great genetics. So I just wanted to let you know some of the stuff that we've done as a board. Sometimes we agree to disagree, but we agree on the point of wild horses. When you look at the humane access of wild horses, I'm going to give you a good for instance. And in Arizona, the HMA that was there burned. You guys may or may not know about the Wild Horse Fire, all right? And those horses went down to Heber and Alpine, right? Well, once they left the HMA, you know that they are now considered unauthorized livestock. I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know. When they're considered unauthorized livestock, they become a free-for-all. And now they're getting picked up by the Forest Service. Here's the problem. Somebody got anxious about the fact that the alpine herd was getting bigger and bigger, and even though it has some natural predators to it, they went out and, as you probably know, made CNN news because 45 of them were massacred just about a month and a half ago. So there's not a doubt in my mind that we've got to come up with a better plan, and as those horses leave the HMA, which does happen, what's our plan B? How do we handle that humanely where they can move on to critical wilderness and help us with wildfire?
Other questions?
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Tell us who you are and where you're from.
I'm Veronica from Tucson, Arizona, and I'm wondering how many states are involved in your organization? How many states do you work with?
For critical wilderness. How many states?
I couldn't hear.
How many states in critical wilderness? How many states are involved?
Are you referring to how many states have critical wilderness, or it's primarily in the western states? So the 110 million acres of designated critical wilderness, primarily in western states, and that's better too because we have more water and forage. When you start going east, we start seeing a lot of drought-stricken areas, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, places like that. Water's a little tough, and there's a lot of competition for water and forage. So when you get up where we are, in the very far north, I mean north of where we are here in Northern California, to me this isn't Northern California. I live in the 5th largest county, Siskiyou County, California, and we have the same population density as Montana. Okay, we have about if you take out 7,000 people living in Wairika, we have our 6,100 square miles, one person per square mile. That's the same as Alaska. So people don't realize we have a lot of wilderness, we have a lot of forage, we have a lot of water, and everything's on fire and everybody up there saying, what can we do, what can we do? Because we're chasing these fires and we're losing. So we know absolutely, no doubt about it, if we put an herbivore population back in and we've got an inventory of horses, unfortunately, cervids are out of inventory. Okay, so BLM's got a whole bunch of them all in corrals. They're continuing to round up. We just move those guys out there. But yeah, it's primarily in the western states, far west.
You know, one of the things I wanted to ask too is as we got our board together and we've been going forward as an all-volunteer board, it's really for the love of the wild horses. But I would like Kelsey to tell you why she stepped up, because she's from Illinois.
So I have been involved in horses pretty much my entire life. And when I went to law school, I was on Law Review and I was writing an article about land management out west. And I kind of went down a rabbit hole of about a year and a half where I really started devoting a lot of research to wild horse management. Because definitely in Illinois, most people don't even realize that there are wild horses and that there is a federal program in place since the 70s to protect the wild horses. So it really opened my eyes to the fact that we have more wild horses in the BLM corrals than actually out on the range. And so I was so excited to be part of the board because we're talking about so many different interests. I mean, we do a monthly call and we kind of share our insights and experiences. And when Mike Schultz came on the phone call and described private landowners that are getting these huge, exorbitant contracts to manage horses literally as livestock, not only is it heartbreaking from an emotional standpoint, but it's shocking as an American taxpayer. So I think the issue is so multifaceted, and I'm going to kind of segue to something that's probably relevant to the weekend with Mustang training. I got a Mustang in April. I did a 100-day challenge, and it was an Illinois tip challenge, and it was such an interesting community because there were so many passionate horse enthusiasts that spectated and were also involved in the group. There were roughly about 30 people. And just really trying to better the situation for the horse. But the unfortunate thing is that it's just such a small percentage of horses that are helped through this program. And unfortunately, through the after program of placing, a lot of times those horses end up getting back to kind of this kill pen situation because not all of them are really easy to deal with. So I had kind of an outlier experience. I have a pocket pony that I still have. His name is Rio, and he's a lifer. He's staying with me, but so it's been a very interesting experience where I think everyone really has an interest point in this, regardless of whether you're interested in horses.
And one of the things that was my hot spot that brought me to Wild Horse Fire Brigade is because I watched the adoption incentive program, the AIP, go way wrong in Arizona. You know, the AIP program that the BLM's running where you give people $1,000, $500 at one time, $500 the other time to adopt the horse. And I watched no less than 8 horses in one pen, one roundup go. They were adopted as a foal or maybe a weanling, but anyway, they were less than 2 years old. And I watched one family haul the horses. All 8 of them came from one family ranch, and they had title in hand, which meant they were paid the $1,000 already, and they sent those horses through the slaughter pipeline. I watched it because I lived 38 miles from the Mexican border. And I watched the AIP title be turned over, and I went, this is a program that has gone wrong, that we are paying people to murder our horses. Not all people do that, but a lot of them do it. New York Times did a big expose on it, over a year ago, and I think we keep turning a blind eye to it, and we need to stop. That's what drove me to say, that's enough. We need to do something different. And I want to make sure you all get to know Michelle, because every photo, so many of the photos that you see that Bill used in the presentation, and so many of the photos we use in our social media are, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. So a little bit about me. I originally got a Bachelor of Science in Biology, and I did an emphasis on animal behavior. I originally wanted to go to veterinarian school, and I wanted to work really closely with animals, but life took me in a different direction, and that's why I went into the nursing track. So here I am. I'm back in the animal world, so it's actually pretty exciting for me, and being able to live amongst the wild horses every day really inspires me to want to, do something better for them. I'm getting to know them on their terms. And it's just really been quite an experience. So I actually work more hours now than I did when I was employed as a nurse practitioner. But it's great because, I'm with the horses every day, and I'm just truly inspired by them.
Any other questions?
Oh, hang on.
And I know we came
Hang
in
on just a
just...
second. Tell us who you are and where you're
Oh,
from.
Patricia Griffin, Sofel, Sweetbow Horses. And we do participate in that program with the $1,000, and we do it the right way. We keep the horses a year to 3 years. We follow them wherever they go thereafter, et cetera. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that program because I think sometimes the $1,000 is very helpful for the tip trainers, and they do have to keep them over a year. And is it being abused? It's being horribly abused. And I think that's on the BLM, though. I don't think that they're doing the right job. I hate to see that program go away. We don't need it. We're not worried about the $1,000. But I worry that tip trainers may not train them because they could just adopt them for $25, hold them for 2 months, and take them to the kill buyers. Then it could almost open the pipeline up more for people to adopt a wild horse, $25, keep it a couple months, and then take it and drop it off.
So I'm sorry, I didn't get your name and where you're from?
Patricia Griffin Sofel. We have Sweetbow horses where we train American Mustangs and adopt them out after, but they're fully trained, so
Okay,
they don't end
but
up.
did you have a specific question?
Yeah, I do. What would happen? What could happen if there wasn't a $1,000 incentive program? Because that forces you to keep the horse a year.
Well, okay.
What would happen if they didn't have that program?
Right.
What
So,
could happen?
Yeah, so I understand the question. The program is only necessary because we have this excess roundup, we have inappropriate management, I call them inappropriate management levels of horses. When you have herd sizes that are 50 or 100 guaranteed inbreeding, that's mismanagement by the BLM. Apparently the people at the BLM don't care about genetics. So we're going to get a lot more inbred horses. We know the floor. If you read their own management handbook, they talk about a floor that's much higher than the AMLs on a lot of on the herd management areas. So the appropriate number of horses. Some organizations say 2,500 free roaming adults in a herd to maintain genetic heterozygosity. So we see this mismanagement, commingling, forcing roundups. And then you have to have these Band-Aids that are very expensive. One of those Band-Aids is the AIP program. Okay, now having said that, and you guys are horse people, obviously, we have 7.5 million domestic horses in America right now. At any given time, there's thousands of horses that are being abandoned or that need somebody maybe they have a behavioral issue, but there's plenty of horses out there that need help. And, like Buck Brannaman says, I help horses with people problems. The bottom line is with your talent and with thousands of domestics available, trying to justify the roundups by saying, oh, we have AIP, which only, if you do every program they talk about, the prisoner program, the tipping, the this, the that, the other thing, of all the horses that are rounded up, you're talking 5 to 7%. And it costs taxpayers money, so it's a Band-Aid problem. It's just a Band-Aid. Instead of, it's like I tell people, if you got a hole in your boat, quit arguing about how many bilge pumps and where they're going to be and this, that, the other thing. Just fix the hole in the boat. The problem is the horses are in the wrong spot. Force is the roundups, okay? And we have plenty of great places to put these horses. That's a fact. So the law right now, like I said, there's the BLM managers, a new tool to then relocate them into the wilderness areas that are economically and ecologically appropriate. And then we have, of course, right now existing law, HR 1625, humane transfer of excess animals, where government authorities can get horses from the BLM and then through grazing cooperatives with the forest, put them out there where they belong back, doing a job for taxpayers, being cash positive, and of course the impact on the socioeconomics is huge. We're talking, if we have a 5% impact on wildfires, we're talking $5 billion in the change that can happen, insurance losses, homes, homelessness. You know, we get thousands of homes burned every year by wildfire. Does the BLM care about that? I don't know. And maybe it's a good question, because these herbivores reduce fire, and then CAL FIRE and the other fire agencies have a better chance of suppressing. Suppression becomes more effective when you have an herbivore in place. When it's gone, suppression, you're just chasing the fire. You got huge fuel loads. So homelessness, what's that do? You know, I was in Walmart after the mill fire up where I am. It burned out a historic black neighborhood, burned 300 homes to the dirt. Those people were walking around Walmart with no money, with their children, nowhere to go, trying to find a pair of underwear and toothbrushes. They lost everything. This happens up and down the West Coast every year. We're having tens of thousands of people displaced on the street by wildfire. Wildfire is a serial killer, and we have a solution. And anybody who tries to stonewall this is guilty of malfeasance. That's the bottom line. Too many Americans are suffering. We're talking millions of Americans impacted. We have to do something now. Thank you.
We have about 5 minutes left in the session, so we have final questions. Okay.
There we go.
Pass it down.
And we really, really genuinely appreciate all the questions, because there's not been a bad one yet. And it's just a way for us to continue to be able to show you why we care. Whoop.
This guy back here
Well-
hasn't had a chance.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jeff Johnson, and I'm from Cheyenne, Wyoming. And I firsthand have seen these horses in their pens outside of Cheyenne. And what I was thinking, I used to work with this young gentleman that worked for the BLM, and he thinks that Mustangs are a plague on this continent because they're not indigenous. How do you feel about that? I think they were here before the Spanish conquistadors. And that's one thing. And I was trying to think what my other question was. That was like the main thing. They think that these animals aren't indigenous to this continent, for one thing.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see you during the presentation, so I'm sorry you got here a little late, and thank you for your question. So, yeah, you know, I think the whole native, non-native thing has been put to bed. We have so much science. The scientists have lined up. We've got cultural archaeology. I mentioned during my presentation, Sir Francis Drake, a serving British knight, sailed up the west coast of the United States in 1580. He had to dry dock, basically pull his boat out of the water, scrape barnacles, and retar the hull. And he did that on the southern Oregon coast, which is just to the west of where our wilderness area is. And he was there for months, and he sent teams inland, and they met the indigenous. This is 1580, 90 years after Columbus first discovered America, just 90 years. He sent teams inland, and they observed the ancestors of the herd that we live among today up there on the Oregon-California border. We know splinter populations of wild horses survived the Ice Age. That's a fact. Sure, the Spanish reintroduced horses. But like Dr. Ross McPhee says, if we fly to India and we get some Bengal tigers out of the jungle and we keep them in the New York Zoo for 1,000 years and we keep their progeny alive, and then we go back to the Indian jungle and put those horses from the zoo back in the Indian jungle, or tigers, I'm sorry, is that suddenly an invasive species? No, it's a reintroduction of a native species. You know, this whole concept, but it serves a monetary purpose to try to eradicate them. If you're trying to eradicate something, invasive is a negative term you use, you know, invasive. It's unfortunate that money lets people create these false narratives and misinform the public. Again, it's the BLM. It publishes in their plan on page 1 of their executive summary, paragraph 5, wild horses have no natural predators. Anybody that lives in the mountains, I don't know where these people are coming from that write this stuff, but they must be city people, because anybody that lives in the mountains knows everything that eats meat eats horses. So that's the bottom line. So anybody who could write that and then put their name on it, I suspect it might have been Dr. Paul Griffin, who's one of the scientists at BLM, but that's just not true. And you can't manage any natural resource if it's premised on a lie. And that is the foundational statement in their plan to manage horses, that they have no natural predators. So anyway, thank you for your, you have a follow-on question? Somebody can give them. No, you missed the present. Unfortunately, see, you've got $3 trillion in corporations that range from the petroleum industry, mining. The livestock industry is the smallest player out there. For instance, they look at Big Pharma. They use 4% of all the petroleum distillates that come out of the ground for all these different products you buy down at Rite Aid, and they use minerals too. 4%. And so they're actually, when you do their annual revenue and you compute it, they're big. They're a bigger financial contributor to politicians' campaign contributions than the livestock industry will ever be. They're the pipsqueaks out there. So anyway.
Go ahead.
Well, the one other thing that I wanted to mention, I think you were referring a former BLM contractor that said something like that. Is that okay? I do think it's just a general comment and kind of unfortunate sentiment with some certain BLM contractors that do in fact see the horses as invasive, and their actions definitely reflect that in some of those videos online that are pretty horrific. So I think it's an unfortunate byproduct of the BLM. Yeah.
We want to thank you so much for joining us. I'm thrilled, and we're going to stick around, and we'll definitely have time. I'm going to be here. Bill and Michelle are heading back up to our area where we actually have our wild horse herd. I call it the pilot program. So they're going to be taking off, but I'll be here all day. I'm here all day tomorrow. Kelsey will be here as well. But we really want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.